The Christians in Iran are using these protests as an opportunity to minister. And one of the amazing things, there are Christians out among the protesters. And remember, as these people are marching against their government is Islam. It's the mullahs who are in charge of the country. And so they're not just saying we don't like our government, they're saying we don't like Islam. And so Christians are using this as an opportunity to say, hey, you don't like Islam. Let us tell you about another opportunity. Let us tell you about Jesus Christ. The other thing that I've heard just in the last few days that is happening is Christians are providing medical care to the protesters who are injured. If you go into the hospital in Iran right now with an injury, they're going to ask you, did you get this at a protest? If you did, you're going to get arrested. And so Christians are providing medical care outside of the hospital to protesters who don't want to get arrested for being at the protest and being injured. So they are finding very practical, very real ways to speak to the needs and speak to the hearts of Iran's people during these protests to further the gospel.
Wow, that's quite a witness, isn't it, at this time, a time when things are very unstable in Iran. And this year, VOM is highlighting the plight of Christians in Nigeria. They're in desperate need of help and prayer. It seems like we're not hearing much these days about kidnappings and persecution from Boko Haram, like we did several years ago. But I know persecution there is continuing for Christians. How bad is it?
It is bad. And I think one of the sad things is these kind of attacks and kidnappings have become so commonplace that they don't even make the news anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, another kidnapping in Nigeria, another attack on a church in northern Nigeria. Our Christian brothers and sisters there are suffering. They are in danger. And yet, again, as we talked about in Iran, they are standing boldly for Christ. They are choosing to witness, even knowing that it's risky. That's part of the reason we're highlighting Nigeria this year for the International Day of Prayer for Persecuted Christians.
And we're going to show a bit of your video on Rebecca later in this program. But which other countries are of greatest concern right now? Ones, Todd, that may cause you to lose sleep at night?
You know, one of the countries that I think has been in the news in the last few days is China, with Xi Jinping being given a third term. We know what has happened during his first two terms to Christians, to churches, even registered churches in China. So thinking about 5 more years of him being in charge, and probably more than 5 years of him being in charge, that's bad news for religious freedom. It's bad news for our brothers and sisters in China. The other country that I would raise, and it's probably not on a lot of people's radar, is Eritrea. I think often of our brothers and sisters in Eritrea. I had the chance to visit them many years ago now, but there are more than 100 Christians currently in prison in the nation of Eritrea, a nation probably a lot of us don't even know where it's at on the map. And none of those Christians has had a trial. None of them has even been formally charged with a crime. They've just been arrested. They disappear into the prison system, often held in underground cells, often held in metal shipping containers, terrible conditions in those prisons. That's a country that I would love for people to pray for this weekend on the International Day of Prayer.
Well, we don't hear a lot about it. I mean, there's more attention on Iran, Nigeria, Pakistan, China, so forth. But also India, I know there's a big problem there, right?
There is. The government of Prime Minister Modi has made it really kind of open season on Christians in India. And those who attack pastors, those who attack churches, they know they're unlikely to pay any penalty for that. They're unlikely to be charged with a crime. In fact, what often happens is the police will come to an attack and they will arrest the pastor. They'll say, hey, you're a troublemaker. You're trying to convert people. That's against the law. We're going to arrest you instead of arresting the people who have just been beating that pastor. That's reality for our brothers and sisters in India.
And quickly, Todd, how should we pray? What should we pray?
You know, I think praying for a sense of encouragement for our brothers and sisters, praying for God's kingdom to advance in their countries. And I think as Jesus called us, we also need to remember to pray for the persecutors. Pray that they will have an encounter with Christ and come to know him in a very real way.
Todd, it's always good to talk with you. Where can we hear your radio program, the weekly VOM radio broadcast?
You can find a station close to you or links to the podcast at vomradio.net. You can also get there from our main website, persecution.com.
Okay, Todd Nettleton, Voice of the Martyrs, thank you. May God continue to bless you.